Rome is one of the oldest cities in the world, and has always been a place where power and corruption go hand in hand. The city has seen its fair share of drama, especially when it comes to the royals who have ruled over it for centuries. Welcome back to the channel. Today we will look at the forbidden romance between Roman Emperor Hadrian and his male lover, Antoninus. You might have heard of Hadrian before. He was one of the most powerful emperors in the history of Rome, but what you probably didn't know is that he had a very unconventional relationship. So without further ado, let's dive into this forbidden love story. Hadrian was born on January 21, 76 AD in Italica, a small town near Seville, in Spain. His father, Trajan, was a Roman emperor who conquered Dacia and made it part of the empire. His mother, Marciana, was a member of the Flavian dynasty and sister to Titus and Domitian. Unfortunately, both parents died when Hadrian was still very young, so he was raised by his great-uncle, the Emperor Trajan. It seemed like destiny that Hadrian would follow in Trajan's footsteps and become the next emperor, and so he did. In 98 AD, when Trajan died, Hadrian became the new ruler of the Roman Empire. Despite being related, Hadrian and Trajan had a strained relationship. Unlike his adoptive father, Hadrian wasn't interested in military conquests or expanding the borders of the empire. Instead, he preferred to spend his time in the Senate building and writing books. However, despite their differences, Hadrian respected Trajan and wanted to make him proud. That's why when Trajan died, he took it upon himself to finish the Dacian Wars. This way he could secure the northern border of the empire once and for all. And while the war was going on, Hadrian returned to Rome and took over as emperor. Although Hadrian loved his job, he hated all the social events that came with it. That's why he was very selective about who he invited to the palace. One day in 117 AD, the emperor hosted a banquet in his honor, and among the invited guests was a man named No one knows much about Antoninus's early life, but we do know that he came from a wealthy family in Athens, and that he was an accomplished writer. Like Hadrian, literature was his true passion, but Antoninus wasn't just any ordinary writer. He was gay, and had already published several erotic poems featuring beautiful young men. If there's anything Hadrian had a weakness for, it was beautiful young men. In fact, the emperor had quite the reputation as a womanizer. He slept with anyone he found attractive, regardless if they were a man or a woman. And when he met Antoninus, he knew he had to have him. There was just one problem though. Antoninus was a married man and his wife, the daughter of a senator, would never agree to a divorce. But Hadrian didn't care. He was determined to seduce the poet even if it meant destroying his marriage. It didn't take long for Hadrian to make his move. Within weeks of meeting Antoninus, the two were caught kissing in a public bathhouse. The incident caused quite a scandal and could have ruined Antoninus's career, but Hadrian didn't care. He continued seeing the men in taverns and brothels, and soon their affair became common knowledge throughout Rome. The scandal got so bad that Antoninus's wife, Paulina, confronted the emperor about it. She went to Hadrian's palace and demanded that he break up with her husband. But when the emperor refused, she took more drastic measures. Paulina wrote a letter to her father and other influential senators, and told them about her husband's affair with the emperor. She hoped that they would intervene and force Hadrian to end the relationship. But instead, they did something even worse. They started spreading rumors that Antoninus was nothing but a gold digger who only married Paulina for her money. To make matters worse, they encouraged Hadrian to marry someone else. Someone who could bear him an heir and continue the imperial bloodline. The emperor listened to them and decided to marry Vibia Sabina, a young woman from a noble family. The wedding was a lavish affair, and all of Rome celebrated, but Hadrian's heart wasn't in it. He was still in love with Antoninus, and couldn't bear the thought of being with anyone else. As if things couldn't get worse, Sabina turned out to be a cold and distant woman who wasn't interested in having children. Hadrian's advisors were furious. They had tricked him into marrying a woman who wasn't right for him, and now the empire was in danger of collapsing. Everyone began pressuring the emperor to find a new wife, but he refused. He loved Antoninus, and no one could convince him otherwise. In 121 AD, Hadrian decided to take a stand and publicly announced that Antoninus was his lover and not his enemy. He also revealed that the two had a son together, Hadriano Marcellus. Although Hadrian had no intention of legitimizing the child, his advisors convinced him to keep the boy as a spare, in case Sabina gave birth to a daughter. Hadrian then set out on a tour of the provinces, leaving Antoninus and Marcellus behind in Rome. He intended to return to the capital in 3 years, but his plans changed when he met a young man named Antinous. The emperor was immediately smitten with the boy, and decided to make him his new favorite. When Hadrian returned to Rome, he showered Antinous with gifts, and had statues of the boy erected all over the city. But this didn't make Antoninus happy. He felt neglected and unwanted, so he left Rome with his son and settled in Athens. Meanwhile, Hadrian's relationship with Antinous began to deteriorate. The emperor grew tired of the boy's antics and eventually sent him back to Athens to live with Antoninus. Despite the distance, Hadrian still showered both Antoninus and Marcellus with gifts, and they lived comfortably in Athens for several years. That was until Hadrian's health began to fail him. In 138 AD, the emperor left the city to visit his beloved, but he died on his way. When Antoninus heard the news, he rushed to Hadrian's side and stayed with him until he was buried. The poet was devastated by the loss of his lover, but he knew that he had to be strong for Marcellus. He had lost his father just 6 years earlier, and could even bear to lose his mother as well. After Hadrian's death, Antoninus and Marcellus returned to Rome, where they lived quietly for the rest of their lives. Although Hadrian's advisors tried to erase Antoninus and his family from history, there are still records of their existence, mostly because of the poet's writings. In fact, many scholars believe that Antoninus wrote the definitive biography of Hadrian, but if you want to learn more about this fascinating couple, you'll need to dig deeper into ancient texts. Even though Hadrian was one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, he still had to deal with jealous lovers and power struggles. In the end, though, it was his unconventional relationships that made him such a fascinating person. What did you think of the story? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical tales. Thanks for watching. See you next time.